Lithemba Ndlovu was the kind of woman who danced through life, literally and figuratively. At 25, she had already made a name for herself as a rising star in South Africa's contemporary dance scene. Graceful, passionate, and determined, Lithemba's life was a whirlwind of rehearsals, performances, and accolades. She had always known that dance was her destiny, and she pursued it with every ounce of her being. Her mother, Nosipho, had been her biggest supporter and fiercest protector, a strong-willed woman with a deep sense of responsibility. Nosipho had raised Lithemba alone after her husband's untimely death. She had sacrificed everything to ensure her daughter could follow her dreams, even if it meant working 2 jobs to pay for dance classes, costumes, and travel to competitions. But all that changed on a rainy evening in Johannesburg. Lithemba was rehearsing for the most important performance of her career, a solo that will be featured in a prestigious international festival. The stage was slick with moisture from the storm outside, but Lithemba was too focused on perfecting a routine to notice. As she leaped into the air for a complicated jump, her foot slipped. The world blurred as she fell, her body crashing onto the hard floor. The pain was immediate and excruciating, radiating from her back down to her legs. Nosipho was at the hospital within minutes of the call, her heart pounding in her chest. The doctors worked quickly, but their faces were grim. Lithemba had suffered a severe spinal injury. The prognosis was uncertain. She could regain some movement with time, or she might never walk again. Nosipho's heart shattered as she watched her daughter, who had once moved so effortlessly, lying motionless in a hospital bed. The doctors offered a sliver of hope, a cutting-edge experimental surgery that could potentially restore Lithemba's ability to dance. But it came with a significant risk. If it failed, Lithemba could be paralyzed for life. Nosipho faced an impossible decision. Lithemba was unconscious, and the doctors needed an immediate answer. After hours of agonizing deliberation, Nosipho made the choice she thought was best for her daughter. She signed the consent forms, praying that she had made the right decision. The surgery was performed the next day. When Lithemba woke up, the first thing she noticed was a numbness. It was as if her legs were no longer part of her body. Panic surged through her as she tried to move, but nothing happened. The doctor's somber expressions confirmed her worst fears. Despite their efforts, the surgery had only failed to improve her condition, but it had also left her permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Lithemba's world crumbled. Her dreams of dancing were over. The life she had worked so hard to build was gone in an instant, and she was left to grapple with the harsh reality of her new existence. Weeks later, as Lithemba was beginning to process her grief, she overheard a conversation between 2 nurses outside her room. They were discussing her surgery, mentioning how it had been a very risky decision and how her mother had been the one to authorize it. Shocked and devastated, Lithemba demanded answers. Nosipho, cornered by her daughter's anger, confessed the truth. "I did it for you, Lithemba," Nosipho pleaded, tears streaming down her face. I thought it was the only chance you had to dance again." Lithemba felt like she had been struck by lightning. Her own mother, the person she trusted most, had made the decision that condemned her to a life in a wheelchair. The rage that surged within her was unlike anything she ever felt. How could Nosipho do this to her? How could she take away her right to decide her own fate? Lithemba's anger consumed her. She refused to speak to her mother, ignoring Nosipho's desperate attempts to make amends. Every time Nosipho entered the hospital room, Lithemba turned away, her heart hardened by the betrayal. She could no longer see the woman who had supported her dreams, only the one who had destroyed them. Days turned into weeks, and Lithemba's physical recovery began, but the emotional wounds festered. She was discharged from the hospital and moved into a rehabilitation center where she began the arduous process of learning to navigate life in a wheelchair. Every new challenge reminded her of what she had lost and deepened her resentment toward her mother. Nosipho, unable to bear the distance between them, tried to be there for her daughter, attending every therapy session and offering words of encouragement. But Lithemba remained cold, her bitterness overshadowing any comfort Nosipho tried to provide. The other patients at the rehab center noticed the tension between mother and daughter, but they kept their distance, not wanting to intrude. It wasn't until Lithemba met Thandeka, a fellow patient who had been paralyzed in a car accident, that she began to open up. Thandeka was upbeat and resilient, determined to make the best of her situation. She became a source of inspiration and a confidante for Lithemba. One afternoon, as they were wheeling through the garden, Thandeka asked Lithemba about her mother. Lithemba hesitated, then finally shared the story of her mother's decision and the resulting fallout. "I hate her for what she did," Lithemba admitted, her voice trembling with emotion. "She took away my choice, my life." Thandeka listened carefully, then asked, "Have you ever thought about why she did it? I mean, really thought about it?" Lithemba frowned. She thought she was doing what was best for me, but she didn't ask me. She just decided. "Sounds like she was scared," Thandeka said softly. "Maybe she was just trying to protect you the only way she knew how. Parents aren't perfect, Lithemba. They make mistakes, just like we do." Thandeka's words lingered in Lithemba's mind long after their conversation ended. That night, as she lay in bed, she began to think about her mother in a way she hadn't before. She remembered Nosipho's face when the doctors told them about the surgery, how pale and drawn she had looked, how her hands had trembled. Lithemba had been too consumed by her own pain to see her mother's fear and desperation. The next day, during a therapy session, Lithemba overheard another patient talking about their mother who had passed away. The woman spoke of regret, wishing she had forgiven her mother for a past mistake before it was too late. The story struck a chord in Lithemba, and she began to wonder if she would one day feel the same way. That evening, Lithemba found an old journal that her mother had left in a room, likely hoping that Lithemba would read it. Flipping through the pages, she found entries written during the days following the accident. Nosipho had poured out her heart, describing her fears, her hopes, and the unbearable weight of the decision she had made. Lithemba read about the sleepless nights, the endless prayers, and the guilt that had plagued her mother since the surgery. Tears welled up in Lithemba's eyes as she realized how much her mother had suffered. Nosipho had been trying to save her, to give her a chance to dance again, even if it was a long shot. For the first time, Lithemba saw the decision not as a betrayal, but as a tragic mistake born out of love. That night, Lithemba made a difficult decision of her own. She would forgive her mother. It wouldn't be easy, and the pain wouldn't disappear overnight, but she couldn't let her anger consume her any longer. Months after the wheelchair dance showcase, Lithemba found herself reflecting on the new direction her life had taken. Dancing had always been her passion, but now she felt a deeper calling, one that went beyond the stage. Inspired by her own experiences, Lithemba began exploring how she could make a difference in the lives of others facing similar challenges. With the support of Nosipho and Thandeka, Lithemba launched an advocacy group focused on promoting the rights and inclusion of people with disabilities. She became a vocal advocate for accessibility in public spaces and equal opportunities in education and employment. Her efforts garnered attention from the media, and soon Lithemba was invited to speak at conferences and events, sharing her story and raising awareness about the challenges faced by people with disabilities in South Africa. But Lithemba's journey didn't stop there. She realized that her love for dance could still play a crucial role in her life. She began offering adaptive dance classes at a local community center, welcoming individuals of all abilities. The classes quickly grew in popularity, attracting participants who had never imagined they could express themselves through dance. Lithemba's students found joy and confidence in movement, regardless of their physical limitations, and Lithemba found a renewed sense of purpose in teaching them. One day, as she watched her students rehearsing for their first public performance, Lithemba felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had lost one dream, but in its place, she had discovered something even more meaningful, a way to empower others and create lasting change in her community. Nosipho, too, had undergone a transformation since the accident. The guilt she carried was a heavy burden, and she knew that simply apologizing to Lithemba wasn't enough. Determined to make amends, Nosipho began volunteering at the rehabilitation center where Lithemba had spent so much time. She offered her support to other families navigating the challenges of disability, sharing her own story and listening to theirs. Through her work at the center, Nosipho met parents who were struggling to cope with their children's injuries and illnesses. She recognized the fear and the helplessness in their eyes, and she felt a deep connection to them. Nosipho decided to start a support group for these parents, a safe space where they could share their fears, frustrations, and hopes. The group became a lifeline for many, and Nosipho found solace in knowing that she was helping others avoid the mistakes she had made. As the support group grew, Nosipho began advocating for better resources and counseling services for families of individuals with disabilities. She collaborated with local organizations to provide workshops and educational programs, ensuring that families had the tools and knowledge they needed to make informed decisions. Nosipho's journey toward redemption wasn't easy, but it was deeply rewarding. By helping others, she found a way to heal her own wounds and contribute positively to the community. Lithemba's story soon became a beacon of hope in her community and beyond. News of her advocacy work and her dance school spread, and people from all walks of life were inspired by her resilience and determination. She was invited to participate in television interviews, write articles, and even publish a book about her journey. Lithemba's story resonated with people facing various challenges, and she became a symbol of overcoming adversity. The community rallied around Lithemba, embracing her new life and supporting her endeavors. The adaptive dance performances became annual events, drawing large crowds and raising funds for disability-related causes. Local businesses and government officials took notice, and soon the town began implementing improvements to make public spaces more accessible. Ramps were installed, sidewalks were widened, and new programs were introduced to support people with disabilities. However, Lithemba also faced challenges from those who were resistant to change. Some members of the community were uncomfortable with the attention she received, and there were whispers that she was milking her situation for sympathy. Lithemba confronted these attitudes with grace and determination, using them as opportunities to educate and promote understanding. Over time, even the skeptics began to see the value of the changes she was advocating for. Lithemba's impact reached far beyond her local community. Her advocacy work inspired other towns and cities to take similar steps toward inclusivity, and her dance school became a model for adaptive arts programs across the country.